I'm Doc C, PhD company. This is the 60th anniversary of the, really was a one-on-one showdown conference between Dr. Albert Einstein and yours truly. I had put forth powerful scientific projects, fusion energy, and well, other great achievements in various disciplines. Question came up: who would replace Einstein? Well, that wasn't the purpose of my requesting we have a conference as to the future of theoretical mathematical physics, of science in general, and theoretical mathematical physics in particular. So I am forced to expose Einstein as the world's greatest plagiarist. Now, let me review the facts, please. In 1875 plus, H.A. Lorentz transformation equation, 1900 Max Planck, 1903 Philip Leonard, Olinto de Pretro, he had brothers Silvio de Pretro, he was a president, Augusto de Pretro, with a cousin Michael Basso, who worked in Swiss patent office and appears brought Albert Einstein in with him. And Einstein had an academic club. They had this club. They would read and discuss interesting topics in science, especially discuss the tremendous significance of Olinto de Pretro obtaining extraordinary amounts of energy from the transformation of mass into energy per E equals mv squared. Notice E equals mv squared. Olinto de Pretro's work and the equation E equals mv squared was explained to plagiarist Einstein. Olinto de Pretro published in 1903 E equals mv squared in an engineering publication. Then in 1904, republished in the prestigious Royal Veneto Institute of Science, volume LXIII. So I think that's 19, no, it's 53 maybe, where definitely demonstrated the enormous energy obtained in the transformation of mass into energy. Let's concentrate on what is critical, and especially in theoretical mathematical physics and the future of science, and especially theoretical mathematical physics, if you please. The Pretro used E equals mv squared, and that is what Einstein copied and used. Later, when the establishment used E equals mc squared, those that wanted to push Einstein, inside manipulators, said Einstein originated E equals mc squared. That's a lie. 1904, International Science Conference during World's Fair in St. Louis that year. Henry Poincaré presented relativity, streamlining Lorentz's set of equations, and explained time dilation, etc. completely. Einstein may believe he didn't know about Poincaré and would say he never read Poincaré's work. Now, he worked in a Swiss patent office where they always discussed what was new in science, but he didn't know about Poincare. Poincare presented his relativity at international conferences. Everybody in science knew Poincare and his international publicized presentations. 1905, Philip Leonard gave lectures and demonstrations of the photoelectric effect. That is what Einstein obtained a Nobel Prize for, not relativity. Leonard became real angry at his work being credited to Einstein. How did Einstein obtain Leonard's work? His wife, Mileva Merrick, who many say helped him, she was a mathematician, worked for Professor Leonard. When the Nobel Prize Committee sent Einstein the check, he countersigned it all to Mileva Merrick, and it appears Leonard was rewarded, maybe. How was Olinto de Petro not able to claim his E = mv squared? Appears in a love quarrel, a woman shot and killed Olinto de Petro. About that time, Einstein was becoming popular. Realize Einstein popularized relativity per Poincare's work and presentations. Realize for the field equations for general relativity expected to be presented by Einstein, 2 years went by and Einstein still could not present precise valid field equations. David Hilbert, one of the world's top mathematicians, published the field equations for general relativity. 3 days later, Einstein gave a lecture, and it was exactly the same as Hilbert's presentation. Exactly the same as Hilbert's published presentation. Einstein's public relations inside make him all what he did. Well, how could they popularize that? The only thing was that the establishment in science at that time said there had to be a medium for waves. It's that way with water waves and sound waves. So they had this aether. When they couldn't find aether, Einstein took all of their work and says, yeah, this is what it is, but there's no aether. So they could not say we change all the textbooks right now. So then they said, well, Einstein's right. But yeah, there's no aether. They couldn't find an aether, prove aether. I belong to a club that insists there has to be an aether. And there was one fellow that had a volume of about 16 inches by 10 inches by about 4 inches thick of proof there's an aether. But in my opinion, there is no aether. It travels through space, through EM wave. Well, so then they popularized Einstein that this is what it is. It's their work, and by him saying, I don't think there's an aether that transfers through space, then he was getting all the credit, and they pushed him to being the originator. No, it was, as I said, these great scientists worked, and he just republished them. He never heard of their work. No, for David Hilbert, 3 days before he actually published the field equations. Einstein just gave it in a lecture in a class on the board, exactly the same. And they say, well, Einstein's field equations. Say what? Why would Hilbert need Einstein for his mathematical work when Einstein flunked math at the university? Yeah, true fact. He wanted to be a mathematician. he needed Herman Minkowski to correct his papers of 1905. I say this from all references that I read, and they're there, and there's especially my videos of the true facts. Had Maliva Merrick, his wife, and a mathematician, and he also had Maliva Merrick, who was a mathematician, and who worked for Professor Leonard. That helped him. But the propagandists for Einstein get the public to believe that Einstein is the originator of the everything. Say what? Hilbert put forth the field equations for general relativity. PR hype artists for Einstein claim that Einstein was a genius, and that therefore Hilbert copied Einstein. Here comes yours truly. In 1953-1955, there are many YouTube exposés, videos that prove my claims and presentations of the true facts. Notice the cleverness of Einstein. He would answer, if and when answered, a question about plagiarism. Einstein would say he never saw the work or their publications. A bold-faced lie. Concerning E equals mv squared, that is now called E equals mc squared, he lied by saying, I never read his book. Well, did he copy from Olinto Pietro? He said, I never read his book, because Poincaré and others wrote a book. He says, I never read his book. Olinto, the reason is, Olinto Pietro didn't write a book. He showed Einstein his original work before he, Di Pietro, published E equals mv squared. Then later on they said, no, we use C instead of V, so it became E equals mc squared. So all of those, especially the younger generation, say, oh, Einstein put forward E equals mc squared. They don't really know what they're talking about. He never wrote E equals mc squared. He copied Olinto Di Pietro, who wrote E equals mv squared. Then they changed it E equals mc squared, and they say, oh yeah, Einstein put forward E equals mc squared. Di Pietro used V, the velocity of light, but Einstein, then later they would say C is the velocity of light. 1903-1904, Professor Umberto Bartolsi, a mathematician, well, that's what Di Pietro put forward, equals mv squared in 1903-1904 in a prestigious science academy. A professor, Umberto Bartolsi, a mathematician and mathematical historian, wrote a book about Albert Einstein and Olinto Di Pietro, the true history of the most famous formula in the world, E equals mv squared or E equals mc squared. Plagiarist Einstein copied the E equals mv squared. Later, because of established, began using E equals mc squared, and now C represents V, the velocity of light. Einstein would say he originated E equals mc squared. A bold-faced lie. Einstein purposely gave no answer or references in his 1905 papers because he wanted it to appear it was all his questionable original work. However, there are articles that Maliva Merrick signed the papers, the original papers, and at least one that she signed in Slavic. She only did that for official documents, is how she signed her name. And that there are those that saw the original copy and say that's the way she signed it. So she must have had some knowledge about what was being written. And there are articles she helped Einstein with his 1905 work. Most important, Einstein did give one reference. Michael Michel. In English, it's Michael Basso. Remember? He helped him get into and work with him at the Swiss Patent Office. He says, they say, well, no, you can't prove it. Einstein never gave a reference. He did give one reference. Notice, it's Michael Basso. Yours truly, now a semi-retired scientist and inventor who would defend Einstein, especially as the originator of E equals mc squared, now demands history books present the true facts concerning the work of H.A. Lorentz, Max Planck, Henry Poincaré, Philip Leonard, Olinto de Petro, Michael Baso, Malibu Merrick, Herman Minkowski, David Hilbert, and yours truly, especially by one-on-one conference of 1955. Now, those are the true facts, and I say thank you.